My new shoes were ruined, Cindy cried. Jack beamed. It feels so good to get that off my chest. He spent the rest of the day as a human wrecking ball of honesty. He ruined Larry's Playboy photographer scam at the Regal Beagle, effectively blowing his best friend's chances with a beautiful girl named Luann. He told Lisa Page her latest design looked like a penitentiary waiting room when he ran into her at the phone booth, earning him a swift slap to the face. The truth was setting Jack free, but it was making everyone else miserable. Chapter 6. The Compassionate Lie. The climax of Jack's honesty tour came when he found Mr. Furley waiting by the telephone, looking smaller than usual. Lisa didn't call, Furley said quietly. I thought for a minute there, she really saw something in me. Jack opened his mouth to tell the truth that Lisa had mocked his apartment, that she thought he was a joke, and that she never wanted to see either of them again. The words were on the tip of his tongue. The vow was absolute. But then he looked at Furley's eyes. He saw a man who lived in a world of polyester and loneliness, a man who needed a win more than he needed the cold, hard facts. Mr. Furley, Jack said, his voice softening, I have to be honest with you about how Lisa felt. Janet and Cindy watched from the kitchen, holding their breath. She didn't just like you, Mr. Furley. Jack lied, his voice thick with a new kind of conviction. She loved you. She told me through tears that you were the most desirable man she'd ever met. Furley's eyes widened. Really? Then why isn't she here? Her husband, Jack whispered. A tragic illness. Total dependence. She'd leave him in a heartbeat for you, but she knows it would be the end of him. She's miserable, Mr. Furley. All she has left of you is the memory of that pizzazz you showed her. Furley stood up, a tear glimmering in his eye. He adjusted his orange vest. That poor kid. If I'd known the whole story, I wouldn't have turned on the old charm so hard. It's a heavy burden, Jack, being this attractive. As Furley walked out, head held high, Janet and Cindy stepped into the living room. That was the worst lie you've ever told, Janet said, smiling. Yeah, Jack sighed, collapsing onto the sofa. And it was the best thing I've done all week. Chapter 7. The Salt of the Sea. In the days that followed, the compassionate lie hung over apartment 201 like a fine morning mist. Jack felt the weight of it every time he passed Mr. Furley in the hallway. The landlord had taken to wearing even more extravagant ascots, convinced he was a tragic hero in a forbidden romance. Jack, Furley would say, leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen, I saw a woman today at the market. Looked just like Lisa. For a second, I thought, but then I remembered. Her husband. The dialysis machine. The sacrifice. Jack would just nod solemnly, pushing a plate of burnt toast toward the landlord. She's a saint, Mr. Furley. A saint in sensible heels. But beneath the humor, something was shifting in the house. Janet had been quiet, her usual sharp wit replaced by a reflective distance. She spent more time at the flower shop, coming home late with soil under her fingernails and a faraway look in her eyes. Is it the Greg Dunn thing? Jack asked one evening, finding her alone on the balcony. The Santa Monica Pier glowed in the distance, a neon jewel against the black velvet of the ocean. No, Janet said, her voice small. It's just, your vow of truth made me realize how much we curate our lives, Jack. We live in this beautiful bubble, pretending we're just friends, pretending we're just roommates, pretending the world is exactly as it seems within these four walls. But isn't the bubble better? Jack asked, stepping closer. Out there, people slap you for your opinion on wallpaper. In here, we have each other. Janet turned to him, her eyes catching the moonlight. But what happens when the bubble pops? What happens when one of us finds a Lisa Page that actually stays? The question hung between them, more intimate than any of Jack's flirtatious jokes. For a moment, the platonic mask slipped. Jack saw the woman behind the roommate, the strength, the vulnerability, the quiet longing. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers on the railing. I don't think I wanted to stay, Jack whispered. I like our architecture just fine. Chapter 8. The Ghost of Culinary Past. The fragile peace was shattered on a Tuesday afternoon when a man named Sebastian Vane appeared at the door. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, and possessing an aura of cold efficiency, he didn't look like a friend. "Jack Tripper?" the man asked, his voice like ice water. "Depends," Jack said, instinctively checking if the back door was clear. "Do I owe you money or a soufflé? I am the executor for the late Professor Beaumont's estate, your former instructor at the Culinary Institute." Jack's face softened. "The old man? He passed? I didn't know. He left you something. A bequest. But there is a contingency." Sebastian stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the apartment with the same judgmental intensity Lisa Page had shown. "He knew about your living arrangement. He found it amusing, but he also knew the risk. The bequest is a prime location on the boardwalk for your own restaurant, Tripper's Table." Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. It was the dream, the only dream that mattered. "The contingency?" Jack asked. "A morality clause." Beaumont was old-fashioned, despite his humor. He wanted to ensure his legacy wasn't tarnished by scandal. "An inspector from the board will be staying in this building for 1 week. If they find any evidence of improper cohabitation, the deed goes to your rival, Larry Dallas." Jack choked. "Larry?" "He's been working for the board," Sebastian said with a thin smile, "and he's very motivated." Suddenly, the architecture of the lie wasn't just about Jack's dating life. It was about his entire future. He had 1 week to convince an anonymous inspector that he was exactly what Mr. Furley thought he was: a single man living alone, or at the very least, a man whose heart was purely, safely elsewhere. Chapter 9. The Masquerade. The week turned into a frantic theater of the absurd. Janet and Cindy were forced to pose as the cousins from Fresno, visiting on rotation. Every time a knock came at the door, the girls would scramble into the bedroom, hiding their shoes and jewelry. Larry Dallas, smelling blood in the water, became a constant presence. He haunted the Regal Beagle, dropping hints to anyone who would listen that Jack was a man of many mysteries. "Come on, Jack," Larry whispered, cornering him at the bar. "Just admit it. You've got a harem up there. Give up the deed, and I'll let you be my head chef. I'll even let you wear a tall hat." "Over my dead garlic bread, Larry," Jack hissed. The pressure began to fray the edges of the trio's bond. Cindy grew tired of hiding in the bathtub. Janet grew tired of the constant deception. And Jack was drowning in the stress of keeping Furley, Larry, and the mysterious inspector at bay. The climax came on the final night. A formal dinner was arranged, a farewell to the cousins. Jack cooked like a man possessed. Beef Wellington, truffle risotto, a chocolate fondant that bled perfectly. But as the night wore on, the wine flowed, and the pretenses began to crumble. Mr. Furley, ever the interloper, crashed the dinner, wearing a tuxedo that smelled of mothballs and desperation. "I've come to toast the cousins," Furley announced, swaying slightly. In the corner of the room, a quiet man who had been sitting at the table someone Jack thought was a friend of Janet's stood up. He took off his glasses and looked at Jack with a piercing gaze. "I've seen enough," the man said. Jack's stomach dropped. "The inspector? My name is Arthur Prynne," the man said, "and I've lived in the apartment next door for 6 days. I've seen the scurrying. I've heard the whispers. I've seen the way you look at Miss Wood when you think no one is watching." The room went silent. Even Furley stopped mid-toast. "Scandalous?" Arthur Prynne asked, a small smile playing at his lips. "Improper? Perhaps by the standards of the 1950s. But Professor Beaumont didn't leave you that restaurant because he wanted a saint. He left it to you because he wanted a man who knew how to balance ingredients. And love, Mr. Tripper, is the most volatile ingredient of all." He handed Jack a gold-embossed envelope. "The deed is yours. Tell Larry Dallas to stick to photography." Chapter 10. The Architecture of Truth. The aftermath was quiet. The restaurant was a success, though Jack still spent his nights in apartment 201. The trio remained, though the air between them was clearer now, the secrets replaced by a mutual understanding. 1 year later, Jack stood in the kitchen of Tripper's Table. The dinner rush was over, and the scent of rosemary and roasted lamb lingered in the air. Janet walked in, her arms full of fresh lilies for the tables. She looked at Jack, who was deglazing a pan, and smiled. "You're late," Jack said, not looking up. "I stopped by the apartment," Janet said, leaning against the pass-through. "Mr. Furley was in the hall. He told me to tell you that he's moved on. She's a librarian. He says she has the fever." Jack laughed. A deep, genuine sound. Good for him. Everyone deserves a little bit of the fever. Janet walked over and stood beside him, her shoulder brushing his. "Jack? That night with the inspector. What Arthur Prynne said about the way you look at me. Was that part of the masquerade?" Jack turned off the flame. He looked at Janet, really looked at her without the puns, without the slapstick, without the lies. "No, Janet," he said softly. "That was the only part that was real." He leaned in, and for the first time in their long, winding history, there was no knock on the door, no interruption from a landlord, and no need for a cover story. There was just the truth, finally finding its home in the architecture of their lives. Chapter 11. The morning after.